Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday, October 17th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Wisconsin game in 1 day, the game against Michigan in 43 days. Today we're looking at the Ohio State defense, how it performed against the Illinois offense, whether the Illini have maybe stumbled upon something that might help opposing teams attack Matt Patricia's defense. And we're going to be talking about that with our buddy Ross Fulton, the X's and O's guru at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And when Ross is on the show, we're sponsored by Jeff Ruby's of Columbus, the award-winning upscale steakhouse in downtown Columbus, named one of the top 50 steakhouses in America by Food Network. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. All right, so before we get to Ross, I'm going to let you hear from one of our other good friends, Bret Bielema, Illinois head coach. After the game, he had some rather pointed thoughts. You're going to hear the audio drop out here at one point. That's because Bret says a word you're not supposed to say on TV. So it was asked about the use of tempo by the Illinois offense and how that helped them maybe achieve some things that other teams have not, such as reaching double digits, scoring multiple touchdowns, and so forth. That was all in the second half of the game. So here's Bret Bielema's quick thoughts on how they use tempo in the game.
I actually wanted to go tempo the whole freaking game because they couldn't do with it, right? Like we were doing a lot of really good things. So in retrospect, I think we could have done that a little bit sooner, a little bit quicker. Our quarterback's really good with it. But they got good players all over the place. Matt's obviously a very talented coordinator. They got really good personnel. But it seemed like when we went tempo that things really began to work our way. We just needed to go to it probably a little sooner, a little more often.
All right, so there's Bret Bielema's thoughts. Now, much more importantly, let's get Ross Fulton's thoughts on that. Ross, we're going to start. We've got three plays here from the portion of the game where Illinois was running tempo. The first one, they have some success on the ground, and that is not something that teams have had a lot of success against Ohio State with this year. How much did the tempo kind of factor into all of the success that Wisconsin had, and then maybe the success they had on this drive and this play?
Yeah, I mean, Illinois, I know Bielema talks about how, he went back and watched old Patriots games and thought he needed to use tempo and spread out Matt Patricia's defense. And I think there's probably a little something to it. I think also, I think we need a little bit more like of a sample size because there's like the other factor at play here is without Lorenzo Styles, I think they were a little bit limited in what they could do in the back end because, Germaine Matthews obviously was impactful as a nickel, as we'll see, but like a lot of what Styles does, as we talked about, is play safety, and that allows them to sort of like rotate guys, disguise more, rotate guys more, bring downs down in the box more. And I think they seemed a little bit more hesitant to have Matthews function as an actual safety. He's much more in that like traditional slot nickel role. So I think those factors are both at play in terms of in this game. But I do think the tempo probably limited a little bit in terms of like the disguise and what they could do. But they combine it here. So for instance, like this is a 4-by-0 unbalanced look. So obviously when you do that with tempo, like the defense has to respond quickly to match that personnel and adjust. And Ohio State does it fine here. I mean, they're lined up, they're getting a cover one over, which is like, pretty simple, but an easy way to deal with it. And they have every gap accounted for. It's just that the backside safety here, Taylor McLean, has to play the backside B gap, which we've talked about like safeties having to fill interior gaps, like not necessarily ideal, but having your safety do it is not the worst. He takes a bad angle, right? Like he's too late to it. He comes downhill too vertically, and so they get to the edge, and then there's obviously no other support out there with the unbalance. So Illinois had a couple plays out of this like 4-by-0 running the ball. That was I'd say the majority of their success on the ground, those two run plays. So not a lot, but there's some design to it on that one.
All right, next up, that was a little bit of a running success story for Illinois. Now let's get to a little bit of a passing success story. They did not have a ton of success throwing downfield against Ohio State. This is one example where they did. Is this one where you're chalking up the tempo? Is this when you're chalking it up to the absence of Lorenzo Styles, or is there something else at play here?
This one I would actually chalk up to this is the sim pressure scheme not getting home. And so, this happened a few times where, I'd say Matt Patricia, he's using some like zone blitz 5 or more rusher schemes, but a lot of it is these sim pressures, right? And This one is a boundary corner blitz combined with a non-traditional Tampa. So that just means that like we talked about the disguise. You're like rotating. You're playing Tampa too. So you have 2 deep, 4 under with Caleb Downs as the pole runner. But your guys are getting into it from different positions. So like, Bo Atkinson's dropping back here as the hook curl. And so Downs obviously is dropping back from the deep middle. The place where I think Ohio State has been a little bit vulnerable as the season's progressed has been on these like middle of the field throws, both like kind of quick game as well as like these mid-range throws. I guess you'd kind of expect that against primarily zone defense. This one, I think, they just get underneath kind of this dagger concept. So you get the pole runner getting pulled by that seam route and then throw the deep dig underneath it. Good design against Tampa 2. But again, with like that, if you run the sim pressure and the boundary corner blitz doesn't get there, eventually like in a zone, especially like when you're spot dropping, there'll be some holes for a good quarterback, which Altmaier is to find. So again, a couple of times they hit those. The thing is, it's weird about the final stats are actually like don't tell the story of this game very well. We like the Parker Fleming. I like to talk about like how bad did we get beat. Like Illinois actually like had a higher success rate, but so much of it's in the fourth quarter when it's not considered like these advanced stats use garbage time is 28 or more points. Ohio State was up 24, so the garbage time didn't kick in, but Ohio State put their backups in. So Illinois had one touchdown drive against the starters that those 2 plays were on where they used the tempo. And then the second one was, Ohio State put some backups in. It was that fourth quarter. So, Illinois like gained over 100 yards in that fourth quarter when the game was largely over. So I don't think there's like any significant causes for concern, but obviously the tempo and certainly attacking the middle of the field will be something to continue to watch against this Matt Patricia defense.
All right, so that's a couple things that did not go particularly well for the Ohio State defense. Most of the rest of the day went pretty well or really well. We'll get to that in a little bit. But first off, wanted to take a look at some of the stuff where they're just showing some different looks in coverage.
Yeah, so here, again, Ohio State every week, Matt Patricia keeps expanding, I feel like little by little, the playbook, right? And so this is actually like half quarter. So this is or at least that's what Vic Fangio calls it. So you're playing cover 2 to the field and cover 4 to the boundary. So we've talked about quarter, half before, which is the flip of that, which is where you're playing cover 4 to the field and cover 2 to the boundary. So a little bit different look here. You've got the 2 underneath linebackers, the sort of robbers. We talked about how, teams have had some success against Ohio State with these sort of quick game underneath throws or middle of the field. So you're trying to minimize that. Obviously, Illinois still completes this for a short game. But again, just different looks that Ohio State is presenting quarterbacks. So far, you always worry about, like we talked about this, the offense, that, the more you put on people's plates, the more busts you have or missed assignments or execution. But so far, the Ohio State defense has been effectively handling like more and more schemes. So obviously, the more things you can run, particularly in the back end, the more difficult you make for opposing quarterbacks.
All right, and so next up, we're going to here we go to the happy portion of the show, and this is Germaine Matthews. We talked about him earlier, and I saw a lot of people asking, should he just stay in the slot? And it sounds like the answer in your mind is probably not, just because of some of the other stuff that Lorenzo Styles lets them do and all that in terms of being able to play that sort of safety role. But man, oh man, when you looked at him in the slot against Hank Beatty, you understood why people thought, hey, this might be something that they want to think about long term. Because Hank Beatty came in as their leading receiver for Illinois, and Matthews, who really hasn't gotten thrown on all that much this year, when Illinois was throwing the ball his way, he was making stuff happen. This first one is an example of that, sort of that tipped pass that ends up getting picked off by Peyton Pierce.
Yeah, I would say no, A, for the reasons that I said about Styles, and B, because you want to put your best 11 out there. I don't think Devin Sanchez is ready as a corner. Like, Illinois went after him right away. He's sort of gotten picked on when he's been out there. That's he's a true freshman, so it's not like anything bad per se. It's just I don't think you're putting your best 11 if you're doing that. That said, I do. If you were playing a ton of cover 1, which, again, is not what Ohio State's doing, right? They're playing some, but what's really like where they've been really successful is with the disguise and like mixing, zone and man coverages. But if you were playing a ton of cover one, obviously Germaine Matthews here is going to be a better man coverage player than Lorenzo Styles is, particularly against, as you said, Hank Beatty as a slot receiver. So this is obviously a way to take away some of those quick game throws by playing cover one. Every coverage has its pluses and minuses, and so cover one certainly helps take away some of this underneath stuff, particularly if you're pressed up. And so obviously Illinois tried to throw this early. Great play by Matthews on cover one rat, Caleb Downs. By rat, we just mean like the underneath guys, the other safety coming down. And, so that's again, they are able to play cover one and like they will do it. I would still say it's a change up to their zone, but I think you'll continue to see like if teams really try to throw a lot of quick game stuff like this, they'll mix it in. And which with Matthews, you could always, if a team has like Beatty, if like their best receivers in the slot, there's certainly things they can do in terms of like, flipping guys around or following the coverage where, maybe you put Lorenzo Styles, depending on the formation, on the outside receiver and Matthews inside.
All right. Now the next one, this is the Buckeyes defending the run really well. We've talked a bunch over the last couple of years about spill and kill. That was something we talked about a lot during the Jim Knowles era. I don't know if this technically counts as a spill and kill concept or design here, but it sort of functionally looks like that's what happens. There's nothing inside. Running back goes outside, and Caleb Downs is there waiting for him for not much of a gain.
Yeah, I mean, it's spill in the sense because generally speaking, you don't want to box counter. Like by box, you're trying to force the football inside. You really want to spill counter like this. I just think like, yes, Illinois hit those couple runs out of tempo, but for the most part, Ohio State continues to be very difficult to run against. Particularly, as I said, Illinois spread them out a lot. This is 12 personnel. Ohio State continued to largely respond with their 3 linebackers. And so this is the 6-1 look that, Patricia with the Patriots had so much success against the Rams in the Super Bowl against their run game. But yeah, so and Arvo Reese has just been, it's hard to even, people refer to him as a linebacker. Sometimes I don't know if linebacker is the right term for him. He plays as much, if not more, on the edge as he does as a off the ball linebacker. And, he's really effective in this role, right? And so, usually the 6-1, people say you want to run gap schemes against it, but he's been pretty effective taking on lead blocks and forcing it to spill. And obviously, when you have Caleb Downs there to spill too, it's a pretty effective combination.
All right, next one. This is the play where the receiver was initially, I think, ruled a catch, and then they overturned it because the receiver had stepped out of bounds and had not reestablished inbounds. This is one where you can just see Luke Altmaier scanning the field, and there's very clearly nothing there for him. And Peyton Pierce is there, kind of is almost like a spy to sort of keep things, keep things in front of him, and then force Luke Altmaier to make a throw.
Again, so we see these using some man against these spread formations, right? Here we have like a wide bunch. Illinois ran this a lot. So you get this like cover one where you're playing lock and levels. So you can see the 3 defenders at different levels so that you don't get like picked or rubbed when these receivers are close to each other. And then, you got this is a Bears, what Cody Alexander refers to it, sim pressure, right? So you're basically using the nose guard. He's coming to the backside. Kenyatta Jackson's trying to take that guard, and they're trying to free it up for Arvell Reese. We just talked about not being an off-ball linebacker, but here he is an off-ball linebacker, but being a pass rusher and taking on the running back, and obviously forcing an errant throw. So again, we're seeing a lot of these different sort of sim pressures, I would say, right? You're like, here we're running. You got to still have like a rat in the middle, a robber in the middle of the field. They're actually a double robber with Pierce, like we talked about, but bringing 4, but bringing up Reese as a rusher.
All right. And then our last play, this is another example of Germaine Matthews really making stuff happen. This was that strip sack just on a corner blitz, gets Altmaier from the backside, strip sack, and ended up giving the Ohio State really good position where they were able to convert on that relatively quickly afterwards.
Every week, they just kind of add on more and more of these sim pressures, right? Where you're still bringing 4, but they're just coming from different places. And here, so you have Reese walked up. Obviously, that's going to threaten the center. He feigns and drops back. So they're just playing a cover 3 at the end of the day, right? Where you got 3 deep, you got 4 under, and you're dropping off both your linebackers, but as well as Kenyatta Jackson is playing the boundary curl flat. But then you're bringing the nickel blitz, and we talk about like how effective. Again, there's certainly things that Germaine Matthews did from that role that were very effective. And so this is one of them, right? Bringing pressure, causing a fumble, and so leading to a turnover, one of the 3 for Ohio State on the day.
All right. And we had a member on our site ask if we could do a little bit of a preview of the look-ahead game. And Ross has obviously not done extraordinarily in-depth scouting on Wisconsin and been grinding film all week, but wanted to get some kind of more general thoughts on the game. And one of them is, I know we talked earlier about tempo and that not all of the issues that people were sort of chalking up to tempo were really caused by tempo, but is that something that you're expecting Wisconsin to maybe try? Or, Wisconsin's offense has been terrible, like no good, very, very bad, all the time, terrible this year. So is that something that could be an advantage for them in some way? Or does that just get the 3 and out over faster and put their defense back on the field?
I do not think of them as a team that can use tempo. I mean, like what Illinois was doing fits within their DNA, so to speak, and they have a veteran quarterback that's very good. I worry that people are like underestimate Illinois' offense and Luke Altmaier. They're very good. So I would be surprised if Wisconsin tries to use tempo. I think they'll try to slow the game down and eat possessions or limit possessions. But I guess you could see if imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
So, all right, so there's just a little bit of a teaser on the Ohio State defense. Now to the Ohio State offense and what to look for from them this weekend. We've obviously talked on the show earlier in the week about the fact that they're probably just sort of working on some stuff and they probably don't have all the RPO tags turned on some things. With this being a game where Ohio State is once again a big favorite, are you expecting this to be another game where Ohio State fans are probably kind of banging their heads against the wall and wondering why they're not really opening things up? Or is this a week where you think Ohio State tries to maybe put a little bit more on Julian Saint's plate?
I think it's a week where you try to put a little bit more on his plate. I think they've had 2 road games against good teams, right? I mean, I think if anything, Washington is better than I think people even gave them credit for at the time. They're still very underranked in the AP Top 25 relative to their advanced stat ratings. We'll see how they do this Saturday, obviously. And Illinois is a really good team at home, and that was a difficult spot. So this is their first road game where I think they should, can all be expected to win pretty handily. So I think this is a good opportunity on the road to put a little bit more on Julian Saint's plate. Ryan Day had a comment during his press conference about, they've had 6 games now of trying different things out, and they, I'm obviously paraphrasing here, but I took it as, we now know what some guys can do and can't do, and we got to stop asking guys to do things they can't do. I took that as a reference to some of the multi-tight end sets and the usage of the tight ends. And so I personally have been looking for them. I think they'll be a little bit more spread out on Saturday. I think we'll see maybe some use of tempo. I think we'll see some more throwing on early downs. And as I said, put a little bit more on Saint's plate. And, that's not just throwing vertically downfield, but just giving him some more early down opportunities to throw the football, whether that's off of live RPOs or just, down drop back pass concepts.
All right. Well, a great place to put more on your plate is at Jeff Ruby's of Columbus. They are proudly offering nationally acclaimed USDA prime steaks, seafood and sushi, impeccable service, live entertainment, and an attention to detail that is simply unmatched. Just go to jeffruby.com/Columbus to check out the menu and make a reservation today. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.